Hey everyone, it's Hans here with Anglers Covey. It's March and our bug of the month is the sculpin. So today I'm going to walk you through tying Kelly Galloup's Zoo Cougar. This is a great fly to fish on a sinking line. It's not weighted, so it's really easy to cast, and it really likes to dart between those currents subsurface. It is important to fish it on a sinking line though. So pretty straightforward tie, but I'm going to walk you through it right now. Alright, the Zoo Cougar. So we're going to start out with 100 denier GSP for the thread. I'm gonna go ahead and get my thread started towards the eye of the hook, work rearward. Once I get about to where my thread is hanging at the barb, I can go ahead and trim off my tag. Okay, now the tail for this fly is gonna be Maribou blood quills and olive. And we want that tail to be about the length of the shank of the hook. So I'm going to take this feather in my hand here, stroke all the fibers so I can line them up, move my pinch, and then measure. So I have about a hook shank in length. If I'm going to err on the side of too short or too long, I'm going to go a little too long. Okay, so I'll transfer that measurement to my material hand and grab this guy down at the bend of the hook here. Okay, so put 4 or 5 good solid wraps on here with some nice tension. I'm going to pull that Maribou up, work my thread forward, twist the Maribou, and then capture it up here closer to the eye of the hook. This is just going to help create a nice smooth underbody. Okay. Once I get a couple solid wraps here, I can pull the feather up, trim it off, and then just cover the rest of this with some thread just to lock it all down. Now the body of this fly, we're really just looking to create a nice bright belly. Most bait fish patterns are going to have a lighter belly than their back. So we're going to use pearl flat diamond braid. Tie that in right at the back of the hook here, right where my tail started. Okay, make sure I got it anchored nice and tightly, and then work my thread forward to about the 1/3 part. Then we'll take this braid, we're just going to wrap the hook shank with it. This stuff is real durable too, so you don't have to worry about it breaking. Once we get up to the thread, where my thread's hanging, about the 1/3 part, I'm going to grab that with my thread. With 3 wraps, put a couple wraps right in front, and then nick this off with my scissors. Now we're going to put an underwing on. This is going to be calf tail. This is going to act as a support for the mallard flank we put in. So I'm going to grab, I don't know, about a finger's width of it. Okay, so I got the calf tail here. I'm going to hold it by the tips and pull out all of this shorter fibers. I don't need any of that stuff. Okay, so we'll get all those shorter fibers out. I'm going to tie this in as long as I can. Grab it right at that 1/3 mark. And make sure it's staying on top of the hook shank. We don't want it to roll around the side. Okay, so I'll use my thumb here to kind of push down with my fingernail. It'll help spread that nice and evenly around the top of the hook shank. And that's our underwing, our little support. Okay, get some nice solid thread wraps on there so it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, now the overwing is going to be some olive mallard flank. Now it's important when you're selecting this feather that you grab a feather that is straight and not twisted. If you look down the stem of this, you can see it's straight. If you look down the stem of this one, you can kind of see how it twists off to the side, and that's going to cause your fly to spin in the water. So make sure you get yourself a nice straight feather when you look down the stem. We're going to tie this in so it goes almost the full length of the tail, just a bit shy. And we'll grab that nice and tight, making sure it's staying on top of the hook shank. Okay, once I get up here, I can trim this off. Lay down a little thread base here just so I don't have much bare hook shank. and then walk my thread back to where that wing started. Okay, looking excellent. The next material is going to be some deer hair. We're going to use this to add a collar, which will represent pectoral fins, and then we're going to use it to spin at the head to form the head as well. So I'm going to get a decent sized chunk of this so that we don't have too sparse of a collar. A lot of times in deer hair, people talk about pencil widths. I'd say I've got maybe 2.5, possibly 3 pencil widths worth of deer hair. Okay, so maybe that gives you an idea. That's important that we get all this under fur out. It's not going to work very well if you keep it in. So I'm going to hold it closer to the tips, come in here and pull all the shorter hairs and all that under fur out. Helps sometimes if you just kind of flick it. It'll make that stuff easier to grab and pull out of there. Okay, once we have the hair looking fairly clean, we're going to put it in a stacker so we can align the tips. And I'm hit the stacker on the desk a couple times to make all those fibers line up like I want them. Okay, so you can see I've got the tips more or less lined up here. We want this collar to go about 1/3 of the way down the hook shank. So I want, when it's tied in, to sit about right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer to my left hand, grab right where I want it to sit, and then I'm going to trim those butts off right at my fingertips here. Okay, so I'm going to come in with my scissors, cut right here. I'll give it a nice flat straight edge to tie in. So I'm going to hang that cut edge right over where my thread is sitting. I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise, which is going to make my thread jump towards my material hand. Okay, so once I come up and over, it's going to want to fall rearward. Okay, so I'm going to put a loose wrap on, grabbing just those butts, cinch a little bit, put another wrap on, cinch a little bit, and then a third wrap. And before I pull, I'm going to switch, pinch under, and then pull straight down with my bobbin. You can see how that flared all that hair right on top. We want to make sure it doesn't go under the hook shank. We want that staying on top. Okay, so pull real tight, and then I'm going to work through these butts right in front. That's just securing those hairs down a little better. Then get up to the hook shank, lay down a little bit of a thread base here, and then work backwards. That'll keep that right where it's at. Now, if you have a little bit of extra room up here, you can come with your scissors and try to trim these butts off nice and close. Okay, now we're going to put, depending on how comfortable you are with deer hair, this is going to take 1 or 2 spins of deer hair. So we're going to just do 2 here. I'm going to grab about the same amount that I used for the collar, maybe just a tad less. This will be 2 pencils instead of 2.5. Similar procedure, we're going to clean out the butts here by holding the tips. Okay, now I don't need the tips anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut these tips right off here. After I change hands, I'm going to hold the butts in my material hand now with the tips pointing forward. And then I'm going to cut off all of these tips. They're not needed. Okay, so I got the tips cut off. I'm going to lay this right on top of the hook shank here. I didn't get all that under fur out. There we go. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a loose thread wrap on, cinch it a little bit, another loose thread wrap on, cinch it a little bit, and then another half turn here. Okay, And then I'm going to walk this around the hook shank and tighten. As I got that half turn, you'll see it'll go around the hook shank, and then I'll pull. And that'll be our first spin. Okay, now I'm pulling really tight with my thread at this point. I'm going to move this hair back out of the way, work my thread up through it, and get to that bare hook shank right in front, and then tighten again. Okay, and then I'm going to lay down a little thread base right here in front of that deer hair. So nothing's going to loosen up on me. Now I'm going to support the hook shank here and just kind of compress this deer hair a little bit. Give myself a little working room for the bare hook shank we have right up here at the eye. And this is where we're going to put our last stack of deer hair, or spin our last bit. So I'm going to grab just slightly less than I did on that last pinch, so maybe like a pencil to a pencil and a half here. We're not looking for floatability, we're just looking to form the shape of the head of a sculpin, a nice broad head. So if you go really tight with the deer hair, you're going to make this thing float too much. So again, cleaning out the butts, getting rid of the under fur. Okay, then I'm going to change the direction of the hair so so I'm holding the butts in my left hand. The tips will be pointing over the hook eye. I'm going to cut those tips off again. Okay, now this could be tricky without a ton of hook shank here. So I'm going to hold this on my side of the hook shank at an angle. And I'll bring my thread up around it and then sneak that thread under the hook eye. Okay, so if you have too much thread out, it's not going to work. So I choked up on my thread again a bit, come through here, over that deer hair, directly under the hook eye. So I got to detach once, go two, and then we need to do that third for the half turn, tighten a little bit, then move back to the hook shank, and it's going to start spinning. Okay. Beautiful little spin there. I'm going to support the hook eye, pull with my thread so I can really tighten that thread down. And I got to move all this deer hair back and sneak my thread up through it to the hook eye here. Okay. And then lay down a couple thread wraps right behind that hook eye. Okay. So we're good there. Now we could go ahead and throw in a whip finish. Sometimes easier said than done with the deer hair, but if you just get it started and then try to preen the deer hair out of the way, you can usually sneak it right behind the eye there. Tighten. Throw in another one just for safety purposes. Tighten. Now we can trim off our thread. Okay, now I'm going to preen this hair around. Everything looks good here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the trim job now. Okay, for trimming, we're going to use a double-edged razor blade. Careful here not to cut yourself. These things are nice because they are flexible. You see when I squeeze it, it bends. So I'm going to bend it kind of like a rainbow. I'm going to start my trimming right at the hook eye and go up at an angle like this so that it's more broad here towards the collar. Now, you want to be careful that you don't cut your collar off, so don't go too far on your first trim. You can always trim more. You can't put it back on though. So I've got a pretty aggressive bend in this blade. Start right at this hook eye, resting the blade on the hook eye, push back, and then wipe that off and see where you're at. Okay, so we're going to continue with the trim job here. Rocking, pushing back till we get to about the collar. Okay, and then once you get Most of that you can come in here and hold the collar so that you're able to get the other stuff without nicking the collar. So from here I can come in and kind of just clean this up now with the razor blade. Getting all that untrimmed hair off. I usually actually try to start with the bottom. I didn't do that this time, but you want to cut along the bottom in a perfectly straight line. Okay, so I'm going to rest on the hook eye and come here and just cut flat. Okay, beautiful, just like that. Then I'm just finishing up the shape here with this razor blade, getting these butts that I didn't get with my initial trim. We'll come to this side, get some as well. Now, you can use your scissors to get in there and get some of those butts that we did not get with the razor blade, and then clean up with the razor blade afterwards. So I'll come in and hold the collar back. These are all butts here, so I'm just going to nick those with my scissors. Okay, and then I'll do that on this side as well, and anything hanging under the hook shank, I'm going to come in and snag those with the scissors also. And once we get those butts off, it's easier to come in and clean up. So we'll finish out our shape here. Got a couple more butts in here. Trim those guys off. Come to this side a tad. Hit it, and then it's just a cleanup job from here. You can spend, that'll fish great just as is. You can spend all day going through and trying to make this head perfect, but it's not necessary, to be quite honest with you. So I do want to make it look pretty for you guys. And we're just looking to make it the same on each side so that it tracks through the water in a straight line. It doesn't spin on us. Okay. Nice broad head there. I usually pull it out of the vise to do some of this, so it's a bit tricky trying to keep it in there for you guys to see, but we'll manage. Okay, and then once I'm happy with my trim job, I like to come in here and kind of just push down on that collar a bit, flatten that out. Might expose any more butts that I have poking through, like these guys. Get those trimmed off. That is the Zoo Cougar by Kelly Galloup. Great little sculpin. Oh, see, I turn it to show you and find a little more of those butts I want to clean up. All right, great little sculpin pattern. Fish is awesome on a sinking line. It's totally weightless. Well, I mean, as weightless as a fly can get, so it makes it really easy to cast. It really darts around on a sinking line. I hope you liked it. So that's the Zoo Cougar by Kelly Galloup. It's one of my favorite unweighted flies to fish on a sinking line because it makes casting fun again. It gets rid of the whole chuck and duck scenario, and it resembles more of a dry fly cast. And it absolutely crushes fish. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Come in and ask me if you have any questions or comment below. We'll see you on the next video.